Hi, I'm Leo Finelli, and you're listening to Generation Change.
Last month, my new friend Elijah Pelton told us a little about an organization he works with called Voters of Tomorrow, which seeks to educate, mobilize, and represent Gen Z in politics through advocacy, voter turnout, and educational efforts. So this month, we're introducing you to Voters of Tomorrow's communications director, Marianna Pecora. Marianna is a 20-year-old youth activist and college sophomore. Marianna was born and raised in Southern California, where she lent her communications and organizing skills to local congressional campaigns and played a pivotal role in organizing and executing the June 2022 March for Our Lives in downtown Los Angeles, drawing thousands of participants. She lives in Washington, D.C. and is studying political communications at George Washington University. Marianna and I talked about growing up near the US-Mexico border, why she chose George Washington University, and what she's been up to in our nation's capital. So, hi Marianna.
Hi, how are you, Leo?
I'm doing quite well today. I've been really excited all day about meeting you.
That makes me so happy.
So, were your parents active in politics and in their community?
They actually, they were definitely active in my community. Like they were definitely like the type of parents that were sort of always showing up to school stuff or like volunteering. My mom and I were part of a volunteer organization together when I was in middle school and high school, but I actually didn't really grow up in a very political household. My mom is a first generation immigrant. She grew up crossing the border between Tijuana in Mexico and San Diego, where I grew up. So her sort of political conscience and her idea of like civil service is a little bit mixed. Even like she has holes in her sort of like history knowledge because she went to school half the time in Mexico and half in the United States. My dad, on the other hand, he is an attorney. He grew up in upstate New York, very sort of like American family, but he's like not very political as a person. So a lot of my political conscience and like my sort of political upbringing came from sort of just like seeing the world around me, seeing the news, having some sort of like really pivotal elections happen along with really pivotal points in my life.
What was it that first got you interested?
It's really difficult for me to find like one moment where I sort of was like, oh, this is what I want to do. But when I was in sixth grade, the 2016 election was happening. I was born in 2003. So I was like 12 or 13 at the time of the 2016 election. And it was just like the first time that an election was sort of happening in front of me, the first time that I was paying attention to one, even if not like sort of fully, like I definitely wasn't like fully up on the news every single day when I was 12, but it was in front of me and it was something I couldn't avoid. And growing up in a household with a first generation Mexican immigrant and having family that live on the other side of the border, I was hearing a lot of really like hateful and really disturbing rhetoric from Donald Trump and his campaign. And because I didn't really have any sort of like political upbringing in my house, I was seeing this happen sort of on the outside. And I didn't really know what it meant to be a Democrat or what it meant to be a Republican. But I could see a pretty like clear distinction in my eyes of like moral right and wrong happening in politics in front of me.
Did being close to the border with Mexico give you a front row seat to immigration and border policies?
It definitely did, but more than in sort of like the like caravans of people coming across the border illegally way. More than that, because like that isn't really something you see. Like it's just like it really isn't sort of like the way it's depicted in the news or by a lot of people. Like it's not visually that way. I saw it more in my family. Like I had a cousin that was trying to get his American citizenship. He had his green card for 2 years and it was really difficult for him. And he was like constantly trying to keep jobs. And it was just really, really challenging for him to get his American citizenship. It took him years. I'm actually not even sure if he's gotten it yet. And again, the 2016 election was like really putting that into perspective for everyone. There was this like really big fear that like members of my family weren't going to be able to become legal American citizens, even though they'd been like waiting a really long time and going through the process the legal and proper way.
So what did you study in high school?
In high school, I went to a really small school in Southern California. I sort of just like took pretty normal high school classes. I always really actually hated history growing up. I don't know what it was about it, but it just like wasn't really something that was able to sort of like capture me until a class that I took my junior year of high school, which was a history class with a teacher that just really taught in a different way. We were doing a lot more analysis and like discussion than sort of just like rote memorization. And I was like in that class during the pandemic as the 2020 election was happening too. So I think it was a sort of combination of that class with this really great teacher that I owe a lot to, and an election happening right in front of me where I was able to see the reflection of our past happening in our present, and I was able to compare sort of the historical underpinnings of American government and society to what was happening right in front of me that made me really want to participate and be more involved.
And right around when you graduated high school, you were the lead organizer for the 2022 March for Our Lives in Los Angeles. What did you do to organize and prepare?
So I was one of them. There were definitely a couple of other people that were really involved with that event that it absolutely would not have happened without. That was a really crazy week for me because for those who don't really remember the 2022 marches, they came sort of right after the Buffalo shooting and the Uvalde shooting. And there was a pretty quick turnaround time on them. I think it was about 2 weeks between the Uvalde shooting and the marches happening. Because I sort of grew up in my political conscience during the pandemic, that was like one of the first really big protests that I had any sort of part in organizing at all. And my job in that was mainly sort of like managing all of the communications aspects. So like I was pitching to reporters, giving the comment, managing speakers, writing speeches for the other organizers. A friend of mine came up to LA with me from San Diego and he did the photography. That event really happened in sort of like a 48-hour period. There really wasn't a whole lot planned before the last like 3 days. And it all kind of like started with a trip to LA that I was making sort of outside of that. And we ended up just really pulling everything together. I think one of the organizers and I sat in a coffee shop in downtown LA for like 5 hours, calling like every truck rental and audio person and police officer to sign the permits. We were just all hands on deck for that really super quick period of time.
During high school, what colleges did you apply for, and why did you choose George Washington University?
My college application process was crazy. I ran the gamut from like tiny liberal arts schools in the middle of nowhere to like city schools like GW. I really wasn't fully sure what I wanted to do, but I sort of took my college experience and my college like application process as an opportunity to look at other people in the fields that I was considering working because I really didn't know what I wanted to do fully yet when I was applying to college. I looked around and I thought about people that I really looked up to. I took a look at where they were going to school and I said, okay, if that school produces someone like this that I really admire, maybe that's a school that I can fit in at too. So I think I applied to like 15 schools. It was a lot. And in the end, I was picking between a tiny liberal arts school in Ohio called Kenyon, GW, and a program at NYU where I was going to be doing the first year in DC and the last 3 years in New York. But ultimately, the reason I chose GW was for the political communications program that I'm in. Every other school that I went to, except for like one, or every other school that I applied to except for one, I would have been like a poli-sci major and a journalism major, or like a poli-sci major and a journalism minor, or like poli-sci and comms. There aren't that many schools in the country that have the program so specifically that GW does, which is political communications. It really just encompassed everything that I wanted to be learning and the work that I want to be doing. The way that I describe it is like a hybrid major between journalism and political science. I'm in reporting classes, but I'm also in classes about why politicians use the media the way that they do. So everything that runs the gamut of political communications is sort of encompassed in my major.
What do you like about Washington, D.C.? It's so far away from California.
It is, and it's really, really hard to fly home to San Diego, actually. There's no direct flights, and it's challenging. But I've always really enjoyed cities since I was little. The traveling that I did with my parents, for the most part, it was to big cities. We weren't really like beach in the middle of nowhere vacation type people. I really enjoy being in a place that's sort of like busy and quick moving and where people are ambitious and there's a lot of energy, where you're sort of like doing 10 different things in a day, hopping from one part of the city to another. That doesn't really happen in Southern California, and I was kind of like sick of it. I grew up in a beach town called La Jolla that's like a little bit north of San Diego.
I've been there.
You have?
Yes, I've been there and I've seen all the seals.
We have lots of, so my house is like a 10-minute walk from the seals.
Wow, I just
But
missed you.
yeah, exactly. I love La Jolla. I love my hometown, but it's a lot slower. And I was kind of like done with that. I wanted to be in a place that was moving a little bit quicker, where people are unashamed about their ambition and they want to work hard and they want to be around other people that are working hard.
Well, when I was little, I would travel a lot with my family and I would go to big cities. I would go to DC and Baltimore because my dad's parents used to live in between there. That's where my dad grew up. And I went to Philadelphia and I went to New York City, which I absolutely love, and where my sister now goes to college.
I have a cousin in Philly and a cousin in New York. I love both of those cities. Philadelphia is really special to me, specifically in the context of my political work, because the first Voters of Tomorrow Summit was there. It was the first time we really had like a good chunk of the team in a room, and we just had like such a great time those 4 or 5 days that we were in Philly.
So, what are you studying at George Washington University? Oh, wait, we already covered that.
It's okay. I'm studying political communications, and it's really sort of like a hybrid between like political science and journalism. I'm in classes where I'm like producing video content and web content, but I'm also in classes that are sort of like political science theory classes and like media theory classes. So, and like news reporting classes. So covering like all sorts of aspects of journalism, news, media, politics, all of it.
So, being in DC gets you a front row seat to the political decisions that are made there and to the people involved. But I gotta ask, did Marjorie Taylor Greene really kick you?
Yes, she did.
No.
Yeah, she did.
No.
That was quite the experience. I was brand new in DC. It was my first time doing any sort of like advocacy or work on the Hill. I ended up working there over the summer though and really enjoyed it. But it was quite the introduction to life in DC and politics on the national level.
So how did this altercation happen?
So the entire Voters of Tomorrow crew were doing a week that we put together called Advocacy Week in like our sort of, that's how we like refer to it internally. We have this Gen Z agenda that we update every year, and it's built based on like the polling that we do of Gen Z. So we're advocating for policy priorities that our generation really cares about. But we put this week together. We had like over 100 meetings with different congressional offices, bipartisan meetings, House and Senate. We were running all over the place. And the last really big meeting that we had was a roundtable with the House Rules Committee. And that was the only meeting that we had that was like inside the actual Capitol building and not in one of the office buildings off to the sides. So we just finished this meeting. We're so happy with how it went. We're so excited. We're really proud of the work that we've done. And we're leaving the Capitol. We're coming down the steps and we saw that the Freedom Caucus was doing a press conference. We chose not to meet with members of the Freedom Caucus because we didn't necessarily want to be presenting our policy priorities to rooms full of insurrectionists. But we decided, we're like, okay, well, here's an opportunity. Let's ask them a couple questions, see if we can get I'm on the record with anything in particular. And it seems that my questions about gun violence prevention really upset Marjorie Taylor Greene in one way or another, and she kicked me. And at the time I was 18, a grown woman, sitting member of Congress, kicked an 18-year-old girl.
Shouldn't she be arrested for this?
I wasn't going to press charges against a member of Congress. That's really messy. I didn't want to get involved in it. We were planning on submitting an ethics report to the Office of Congressional Ethics, but then Kevin McCarthy got at the office. So there isn't much of an infrastructure left to submit complaints like that too.
So you mentioned you were the deputy communications director for Voters of Tomorrow. What do you do in that position to mobilize young voters?
So my role at Voters of Tomorrow sort of encompasses the calm stuff. I've been a spokesperson for the organization, ran our digital programs. We have like a social media presence on a couple different platforms. And then we also ran some ads on social media platforms specifically targeting young voters. But my general theory with the work that I do in comms is that the job of a communications team isn't necessarily to mobilize young voters, it's to promote the work that our mobilization team is doing to mobilize young voters. I'm really, really proud of the work that our mobilization team has done to put chapters on the ground in, I think, 25 states right now. We sent 8.5 million texts through that organizing program last year, all targeted at young voters in swing districts across the country. So my job is to really uplift the work that they do and make sure that people know about it.
So tell me about when you wrote an op-ed for USA Today.
So my friends Raghav and Samantha, who were also involved with T, Samantha was the chapters director at the time, and Raghav is the special projects director. The three of us wanted to sort of share our three different stories of how we got involved and why we got involved in politics, and why Gen Z voters were going to be so important in this election and in elections to come. We thought that we had three really unique perspectives and sort of varying reasons for why and what got us involved, and we wanted to really just come together and share them.
You spent last summer, the summer of 2023, interning at the Center for American Progress. What was it like and what do they do there?
So the Center for American Progress is a progressive think tank based here in DC. I had a lot of fun at that internship. I was doing digital strategy stuff for them. So I was doing a lot of social media work and then a lot of email work, essentially like putting together newsletters and stuff promoting the policy work and some of the work that other teams at the Center for American Progress do. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It's sort of like, I think I was a little bit shocked by how it's more of like a traditional office job than other jobs in politics tend to be. But I really enjoyed it and I had a lot of fun.
You also did an internship for the House Democratic Women's Caucus.
Yes, that was really exciting. I got to speak in my capacity as the deputy comms director at Voters of Tomorrow on a panel that the DWC organized for the House Issues Conference back in March. And through that, I kind of got to know their team and work with them on a couple of different things. So they asked me to come back and intern for them over the summer because the House Democratic Women's Caucus didn't really have a digital infrastructure and they wanted to build one up. So it was a really exciting opportunity for me to learn what it's like to be working on the Hill, to get to work with so many different members and different members' teams, because the House Democratic Women's Caucus encompasses I think it's 94 members, but also to get to sort of build something from the ground up. I got to work with the comms director there really closely, and we were able to sort of do what we wanted with those platforms because we were starting on a blank slate.
Cool. So I ask everyone this question because I think it's really important. How do you take care of yourself and your mental health?
I'm very big on taking care of myself and my mental health. I'm a really big walker, and DC is a great city to walk in. I love sort of going on a walk through the monuments and just like putting my headphones in and listening to music or a podcast. I also take that time really often to call my friends from home. A lot of my friends are still on the West Coast. And so if I take like a 9 p.m. walk and call someone back at home where when it's like 6, it's really fun to just sort of like hop on the phone, throw AirPods in, and have like an hour-long conversation with someone I haven't caught up with. I'm a really social person, so I think a big part of like my mental health time is having time with my friends that isn't necessarily like work related. The entire team at BOT, we're all really good friends. It's a lot of fun when we can be in person together, and like we're always talking politics, we're always talking the stuff that we really care about, but it's also really fun when we just get to sort of hang out and have fun together.
So what's next for you?
Well, I'm back at Voters of Tomorrow right now as the comms director. I'm really excited about that. I'm still in school, so I think the thing that's next for me is finishing my degree, but also just working. I'm really enjoying working in the youth space. I don't plan on being here forever. I'm a big promoter of the fact that like the best person to talk to a young person is another young person, and we're the best messengers for each other and to get each other involved. And in the not too distant future, I'm going to be out of college and no longer a youth organizer. So I'm like pretty aware of the fact that my time in the youth space is finite and coming up quickly, but I'm excited. I hopefully will work on a couple campaigns down the line. I'd love to spend more time on the Hill again in the future. I really, really enjoyed getting to see what the like official side of politics looks like rather than the campaign side. And working in government was really exciting to me. So maybe down the line, I'll be back on the Hill.
Well, I hope you will be, and I really enjoyed talking to you today, Marianna.
I enjoyed talking to you too.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Anytime.
Bye.
Marianna strikes me as someone who works hard, has a lot of ambition, and has a lot of fun. I enjoyed hearing from Marianna about her family, and if her cousin hasn't been able to get his American citizenship yet, I hope he can. I would have liked to have gone to that first Voters of Tomorrow summit in Philadelphia that Marianna mentioned. She said that everyone in the Voters of Tomorrow team is good friends that they love when they can meet in person. I would have loved to be there with them in Philly, grab a cheesesteak together, gluten-free bun for me, and just hang out and talk politics. On this podcast, we're going to feature other members of Voters of Tomorrow in the coming months. I appreciate that Marianna reminded me that her time in the youth space is finite. Soon she will be out of college and on to the next chapter of life. Whatever that is, I wish her all the best. If you'd like to recommend someone to be on the show, or if you would like to be on the show, email us at generationchange@leofinelli.com. Please follow us on Instagram at GenChangeWithLF, that's at GenChangeWithLF. Subscribe and review wherever you get your podcasts, and share this with your friends and others. Generation Change with Leo Finelli is hosted by Leo Finelli, executive produced by Julie Finelli, and edited by Nick and Leo Finelli. Our original music was composed and performed by Leo Finelli. Thank you so much for listening.